Okay, welcome back to Talking Truth and Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your host, Brendan Trainer, my co-host, Leland Faegre.
Trump or treat?
Trump or treat?
What do you think?
Yeah, I hope it's Trump.
It's the writer in this, you know.
Oh, okay. Again, it's the countdown, the final week to the election, and we're in the Reno Town Mall, 4001 South Virginia Street.
In the shadow of the Atlantis Hotel.
Right, exactly, in the shopping center.
Remember Steve Pollock that took out 58 humans in Vegas with his, with his advantage there at the at a country concert 2 years ago. Remember that incident?
The Mandalay Bay shooter?
Yeah, this was his hangout, the Atlantis.
Oh, the Atlantis.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least he didn't bring his rifle with his.
We would have been in range. Wouldn't we?
Yeah, with his bump stock, his
Yeah.
dangerous bump stock.
Right.
But anyway, you can come in and vote here today, and get it over with, because there may be even longer lines next Tuesday. And of course, we're unabashedly pro-freedom on this show. And although not perfect, the best pro-freedom candidate, the one that we're rooting for, because this is not like previous elections where the Libertarians held their nose and either voted third party or didn't vote, or
Yeah, that era is over.
yeah, this is different. This is now someone that is enraged the establishment so much that they spent 4 years trying to get him out of office, even more than 4 years. They were spying on him before the election.
During the campaign.
Yeah, during the campaign.
And never had anything on him.
Right.
It was a crime in search of what's the expression? It was a search for a crime that didn't exist. What's that expression? It's very clever. It doesn't come to mind.
Okay, yeah, well,
It'll come to me.
yeah, I mean, we all have our Biden moments.
Yeah, we do.
But
So that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, but Biden has more moments than anybody else.
Right.
As he said that he was running against George for the next 4 years.
Yeah, George.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and of course they have reasons to believe that there was something else, and it wasn't, he didn't suddenly roll back to the 90s, but this has happened over and over and over again. He gets his numbers wrong, he sputters, and he promised free community college in his speech.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
But then he had to go back to the was it who did that interview? The campaign had to go back to her and revise his remarks because he understated the cost of the free education he was promising at the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But he is also saying that there would be 100 million Americans that could not qualify for insurance. It's half of that, but there are caveats involved too. I mean, most of the reason why you would not be able to qualify for pre-existing conditions, it's a temporary condition, and it's due to government regulations. If you remove the government regulations governing a transition from private insurance to, say, Medicare or Medicaid, that number would go way down.
Sure.
It's not something that's in the market.
Right.
It's, so it's...
It distorts the market.
Yeah, it's the government distorts the market, and if we allow the market to work, it would do a much better job than figuring out that the government can solve all of our problems
And bring costs down.
and bring costs down at the same time. That's just supply and demand. The most basic. If you want to bring down costs, you have to increase the supply.
But you see, those people who are advocating for government-mandated health care don't understand these basic free market principles.
No, they don't.
So they can promise them the moon and they expect it.
Just calling something a right does not eliminate the laws of scarcity and supply and demand,
Nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, they always glorify government programs in other countries, but they all have, all of them, even England has some kind of private safety valve, And there are long waiting lines, not to mention the unseen consequences of, you know, they depend on us for research and development, for the private industry in America. To a great extent, they're parasites on the free market here,
Yeah.
as far as their programs go. And, you know, they, in Canada, they have lists of people who die waiting for critical procedures because all the bureaucracy has to do is call it
elective.
Call it elective, right? Triple bypass heart surgery, that's elective.
And speaking of elections, we are in one right now, and you know what? This is deja vu all over again.
Yes, it is. I mean, from 2016?
Yeah, this
Yes.
is what we have right now is exactly the way it was in 2016.
Yes.
They're not counting the votes that are out there. They don't know where they are. They can't, you know, whether they're, I haven't gotten any calls from pollsters on my cell phone.
Oh, they don't call your cell phone?
Yeah, but some are, but
A few maybe,
they're having
yeah,
a tough
yeah.
time finding people that are out there. We know they're out there because we can see the rallies for what they are. You know, Joe Biden had 360 cars come into his Atlanta stop yesterday.
360 cars?
Yeah, 360 cars.
I'm sure they all had 6 people in
Well,
it.
they all had horns. To make it sound like there's
Yeah.
a full load, you know?
Right, and everybody was wearing a mask.
Yeah, I'm sure.
How many times has Joe Biden touched his nose, you know, when he takes his mask off, or even when he has his mask on, or,
I don't know, but it's
or
gonna be-
fingers with his mask, and
We know it's going to be a dark winter because, you know, that's what FDR did. He went down to Warm Springs in Georgia just before he died, you know.
uh-huh.
So, I mean, the darkness seems to follow Biden around. You know?
He's got a perpetual cloud over his head, you know, raining down upon his parade.
Isn't that the perception he wants to? I mean, he's so dark when he speaks.
I know.
It's just awful. Yeah.
Are the American people going to vote for doom and gloom?
I don't think so. That's not the way it works.
I hope so.
Trump or truth? Yes, my own. We should probably fit in the changing your vote story as well.
Oh, we didn't do that, huh?
I think we should fit it in somewhere.
Yeah, we didn't do that. We kind of glossed over the debate then.
And I also saw, I don't see it here, but it may have been the segment I saw on Fox about it, but apparently the search started in, of all states, Delaware.
What search?
The search for, can I change my vote?
Oh,
Originated in Delaware.
okay. And welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm the host, Brennan Trainer. My co-host, Leland Faegre.
Investigation in search of a crime.
Yes.
That was the expression I couldn't think of.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you know that in some states you can change your vote?
I do.
Yeah, you have buyer's remorse in
Uh-huh.
voting, yeah?
7 states permit
Uh-huh.
that. Various procedures are required, but yeah, you can. And Trump is suggesting that if you're thinking about doing that, to by all means do that.
And what state did that, the search for the 7 states originate in?
Of all states, Delaware.
Delaware.
What are the odds?
Yeah. And don't forget Pennsylvania, because the whole question arose in the second debate, which was, you know, a very good debate. I mean, I liked the first debate because of the drama.
Oh,
And,
I love that street
yeah,
fight.
yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And then, but a lot of people, the suburban housewives were all supposed to believe are going to vote for Joe, didn't like it.
They don't realize we're in a war.
No, they
They just
don't.
don't get that.
No, they want to go back to brunch.
Yeah, we're
That's all it is.
pinky up and
Yeah. So the
back to brunch.
the
It's the writer in us. We just can't help
Yeah.
it.
the Biden admitted that he does want to get rid of fracking and phase out oil, and
We'll work it out.
yeah. And so that caused a Google search for changing your vote to spike, and after the debate, immediately after that. So
And there are 7 states that permit that.
right, but Nevada's not one of them. So please get out and vote, and make sure you know who you're voting for.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you don't or are not sure what you're doing, please stay at home. Because our votes count a lot more that way.
Yes. And
But
so
the states that do permit changing your vote are New York, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. The upper Midwest apparently is big on changing your vote. Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, Connecticut, and Mississippi are the states that permit the change of early votes. So-
okay. So and like I said, here at 4001 South Virginia Street, the polls are open.
In the
So-
shadows of the Atlantis Hotel.
Right. So come on down. And we had, of course, most of America was fastened to their TV set yesterday for Tucker Carlson's interview.
Boy, what kind of ratings did he get? Is there any?
I don't know, I was thinking of that, but I haven't heard what the ratings were.
That's
But,
going to be really big news when it
Right.
is announced, because that was big stuff.
right. So we heard from Mr. Bobulinski, right, and he talked about his experiences with the business dealings of the Biden crime family. And he says he met twice with the big guy, or my chairman, as Hunter calls him. And he also confirmed the role of Biden's brother, Jim Biden, as well as Hunter. And when he asked them how they expected to get away with this, they said plausible deniability. I like
Which
that.
is an expression that came out way back during the Watergate era, wasn't it?
Right,
Yeah.
yep. So the text messages, there were also sex tapes out there that...
From the laptop.
Yes, from the laptop.
Yeah. In fact, I believe Bannon is among those who have published some.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also text messages that show that Jill Biden did not want Hunter near an unnamed underage woman or girl, perhaps a family acquaintance or even a relative. And Hunter was grousing to Jim about that.
I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by it, but I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So, and then combined with the Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein, I think we're learning that sex trafficking is not a real thing on U.S. streets like the establishment says it is. It's in the corporate suites. Government honeypot schemes by Israel and now China to compromise U.S. politicians ignorant enough to fall for them, but never proven against Trump, although, it's possible he paid somebody off and they haven't broken their agreement, but we have no evidence that Trump has been involved in any of these underage sex schemes like we do for the Bidens and the others who are pointing fingers when they should be pointing them at themselves. So now this is real evidence. It's not paid for by the RNC to anybody's knowledge, like the Steele dossier was, paid for by the DNC, and yet the media is brazenly just not covering it.
Yeah.
And that is the shocker. I mean,
Well, and you've got big tech also as a
Right.
partner.
right,
As a partner to that disinclination to share what we should all know.
right. And the big tech is being grilled by Congress, the Congressional Commerce Committee right now. And, they're weaseling around the issue. I'm sure we'll find out, get some more sound bites from them before the day is over. But the whole thing is getting very scary because, America has prided itself on being a country of free speech and free thought, if nothing else. And yet now we're seeing all of this censorship and under the guise of protecting us. They always want to protect us. They never want to protect our rights. They want to protect us from you know, disinformation or from unnamed foreign aggression or unproven foreign aggression and all of this other stuff. And you know, why don't they just leave us alone? They can't do that, it seems. And what is their agenda?
Well, they are threatened by
Yeah.
that very discussion, so they have the most vested interest in keeping us in the dark.
Oh yeah, sure they do. The establishment is, we're, you know, there are things that we are not even in the emails because, you know, I mean, Biden and the neoliberals that he pals around with have been making money off of foreign wars since Serbia
Yeah.
in 1999, you know. Madeleine Albright made out like a bandit over Serbia. They destroyed the Yugoslavian state-run radio network, and she put her own radio network in there. So
From
this,
the Atlantic Council.
yeah, so this has been going on, and we know that he and Hunter ripped off the Ukraine. I'm not sure what they did in Kazakhstan, but now we have information about their dealings with China, and it's not very pretty. And I can't, even if Biden gets elected, I can't see this going away.
No, but I can see where, you know, he could be comfortable in saying that, well, I didn't receive a penny. That sort of an explanation. Well, Hunter got his share.
That's what it seems to be.
He laundered the chairman's money
Right.
for, you know, for a better time or a different time. But I mean, I'd still like to know where the money is.
Right. And with Bobulinski, he pointed out that Jim, it's actually in the documents, Jim's Biden share went up from 10% to 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks that's where Joe's money is lying.
That's what he suggested, yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, we're heading for a dark winter if Biden is elected, and not just over the COVID problem, which he is greatly exaggerated, but you know, over the 11 trillion in new spending, increased taxes and regulations, environmental lawsuits.
Can you imagine increasing taxes in this kind of an episode that we're going through right now?
Right.
What kind of a loon would even suggest that?
A Biden loon? I don't know. You know, a Democratic loon? I don't know. What
Taking
can you
money
say?
out of the system when we're not back from where we used to be. I mean, that is just another definition of insanity.
So are the American people ready to budget another 5 or 6K per year for the descent to Washington?
It's just another example of why these polls don't make sense.
Yes.
And unless they're just public school educated, they just can't understand this stuff. You know, which I'm all for. I mean, that might explain it, you know, but it's just not the solution here.
No, it's not. So as far as the COVID goes, are these reports of the spikes, are they political? So far, deaths and hospital visits are not rising, they're pretty flat.
Yeah, death rates are way down, 85%, I saw one number.
Right.
Dr. Paul is suggesting that they're just counting anybody with a cough in these CDC numbers, just because they can receive, you know, money.
Oh yeah,
in.
there's all kinds of financial
Just follow the
incentives
money and-
involved with hospitals and so on.
Yeah.
If they have COVID, they get money from the government. And
So they don't even have to document through testing in order to be counted as someone who's infected.
And when they say, yeah, exactly, that they've already shown that some of these cases are due to motorcycle accidents and everything else.
And a lot of those who are dying, regardless of comorbidity, are dying at their life expectancy.
Right.
So does that count as well? I mean, yes, they could have perhaps lived longer. We don't know these things, but they're loose with these statistics.
Very loose. And they don't compare it to anything else. I mean, they don't compare 200,000 deaths to how many people have died in automobile crashes, how many people have died from even diseases that are nearly eradicated, like tuberculosis. I understand more people have died from TB than that.
And I think in most hospitals, less than 10% of those who are hospitalized are actually in there because of COVID-19.
And masks have side effects.
Yeah.
You know. besides bad breath.
Trump or Trump?
Thank you. And welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainer. My co-host is Leland Faegre. And you know, back in the 60s, the great author Kurt Vonnegut wrote a short story called Harrison Bergeron, in which he described an America in which the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendments to the Constitution have mandated that all Americans must be made completely equal. No one is allowed to be more intelligent or handsome or more physically capable than anybody else. And the government created the Office of Handicapper General, in which a woman named Diana Moon Glompers, who would appear on TV armed with a shotgun, who mandates the wearing of disfiguring masks for those who are thought to be too beautiful. And for those who are too intelligent, they would have to put tiny radios inside their ears to program to go off to disrupt any intelligent thought. And those who are stronger and faster than others are required to wear heavy weights around their wrists and ankles.
So we're all the same.
Yeah, so everybody is equal. Yeah, right. You know, it's democracy. So, now bringing this up because the San Diego School District has recently said that they're doing away with all letter grades. Mm-hmm. And they're no longer going to consider whether a student is truant, whether they turn in their assignments on time,
right,
or whether they show up for classes on time.
I got news for you. Most parents now are reconsidering sending their kids back to public schools ever. They have had it with that crowd.
Yes, so, you know, if that's called dumbing us down so that we're all equal, right?
And every time I hear about the amendment process, when Vonnegut mentions 211, 212, 213
Sounds like the Venezuelan Constitution.
I go right back to James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, and that discussion was, you know, do we really need the first 10?
Right, exactly.
I think Madison won that war, actually.
Yes. And that, you know, that's pretty good because he underestimated the ability of the politicians.
Yeah.
And then, you know, already Biden is talking about putting in the Justice Department, a special environmental prosecutor's office, and you know what that would mean, right? Shame. Anytime you buy anything and ask for plastic instead of paper, you're going to be followed by the SEPTA nun.
The process of
shame.
Yeah.
Bang, shame. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying
Voter suppression is another example.
Right.
Voter suppression is effectively just shaming people for voting the way they want to vote.
Oh, yeah. Anna Navarro was on recently, a couple of days ago. She
I saw her yesterday somewhere.
Right. Well, a couple of days ago, she sent out a tweet blaming the nomination and confirmation of Amy Barrett to the Supreme Court on those who voted for Jill Stein and that pot smoker from New Mexico.
Yeah. You know, and I'm not a big fan of Gary Johnson, but when she described him that way, I would say, yeah, go Gary. Let's hear it for Gary Johnson.
Yeah. And then she appeared on another show with a woman. She's probably auditioning for a permanent seat on The View, I guess. And and then she said that she is going to write in her, when the guest was a Republican, the other guest, Republican woman, confronting her over who she's going to vote for because she's a registered Republican and a never Trumper. And she said she's going to write in her mother as her candidate.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And she declared she has an absolute right to vote her conscience. But not you and me if we want to vote for somebody else besides third party.
Yeah. Some animals are more equal than others.
Yes. So, you know, this is what we can expect if we give these politicians more power.
Well, and then the 4th of November
Right.
is now coming into view.
Right.
And that's really going to be interesting, particularly in Pennsylvania, I think. It's all going to be decided there. And you know this Ben Domenech?
Yeah.
Domenech, I guess.
Yeah.
He's married to McCain's daughter.
Oh, is he?
Yeah?
Megyn McCain?
I didn't
Okay.
realize that until a couple of weeks ago. But he suggests that if justice can prevail here, it will be because Hillary starts her own wine manufacturing company. And she'll call it Sour Grapes. I can't believe he's married to Megyn McCain.
Yeah.
He's pretty good, actually.
Seems to be more intelligent
Yeah.
than, you know, I hate to cast aspersions.
Well, he's more patriotic, and I think objectively so. That's
Right.
what it is, you know. Whereas she just can't let go of her bias against Trump
No.
because of Trump's bias against her dad.
Right. Right.
So
Well, and, you know, and the, I hate to say, you know, that's not good, but the fact is that once these ideologues get into office, I mean, the Republicans are ideologues too, but at least they believe.
Some of them are.
Yeah, but at least they believe in decentralizing everything, so that more decisions are made at the local and state level and.
they can generally agree on that, except for John McCain.
Right. But, you know, if the Democrats get in, we're gonna have the thought police in Washington DC dictating everything, and all the Democratic governors will fall in line, especially if they control all the branches of government, or what did AOC call them, the departments of government? She said something about that. So if they control the Congress, the House, the Senate, and the White House, I mean, we could be in for a heck of a 2 years.
Oh, yeah. It's a scary thought, and I don't think that is without merit as far as how people are deciding how they're going to vote.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear that that's in the back of their minds. We just can't let that happen. So.
Yeah, I'm no
But
big.
how are you going to fix this problem? Because we can address it now in 6 days.
Mm.
But that just takes us out 4 years or 2 years until the next general election. But we have to begin the process of understanding how we got into this mess in the first place. How did this get out of the bottle? How are we going to put it back in the bottle? If that's even possible. History would suggest it's not possible. That we have to go down this road.
Mhm.
We have to go into a new dark age. This is what I've suggested on the show many times.
Yeah, I feel your pain there, Leland.
Because you've got to get to the education process. How are we going to do that? You know, I mean, Trump has made school choice an issue in this
Right.
campaign.
That's one of the reasons why I would definitely vote for, you know, the Republicans, and he was courageous in putting the Secretary of Education, I can't think of her name, but she is definitely pro-school
DeVos.
choice. Yeah, DeVos, right. And that's something that we really have to push for, because,
Without it, I don't see a solution here.
right,
And I think it's probably begun in the midst of this episode, this pandemic episode we're experiencing, just because parents, for one reason or another, are looking for an excuse not to send their kids to that horrible institution to begin with.
Right.
But secondly, because it was out of necessity. And if they will become more and more comfortable with the idea of educating their children at home, then they don't have to go back.
right,
And we're already breaking up that monopoly, because that's what it is. Public schools are a monopoly,
yes.
and monopolies are never,
Ever good. No. As John Stuart Mill wrote way back in 1850, you know, if governments control the schools, then the schools are going to teach what is the prevailing ideology of the government.
What a horrible thought.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, scary. I mean, I remember my first day in a political science course and they were just pushing that 3/5 of the citizen stuff, you know,
Right.
that slavery stuff on the very first, you know, the very first episode of the course.
Right.
So it took, and that was 1972.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, you know, 50 years later. Are we surprised that they're looting in the streets? Are we surprised that they're destroying property? Are they surprised that they're voting for Marxism? I don't think we should be surprised at all,
Right.
because they've been
Because
pushing it
they've been
on
indoctrinating it, you know, to a lot of people in a lot of different ways,
for 50
both
years.
blatant and subtle.
You know, and before me, I'm sure, you know, but
Right.
that was my experience in 1972.
Right. So the founding fathers of Nevada warned against it. Yeah, and then if you go to the Nevada debates, now it wasn't, public schools at that time were not considered to be communist or socialist, they're considered to be Prussian or militaristic and bureaucratic.
But that's where the concept of public schools
Right.
originated.
Thomas Mann was,
Yes.
you know, influenced.
Horseman,
Horseman
yeah.
was influenced by the Germans and the Prussians in his concept of
Correct.
public, universal, free, compulsory public education.
And that's how it originated, you know, and it took off, and, you know, parents, like, you know, there was no opposition
Right.
effectively to it, and.
Well, people plan their lives around it now, you know, they look at the zip code and what the schools are like, and
They buy
that's a big
houses
factor.
in the district. and-
Right, or when there was busing, where to go to, so their kids would not have to be bused, and
Right,
the whole thing is completely out of whack, and we would be much better off with competing schools so that people could send their children to a more liberal school, a more conservative school, a religious school, a non-religious school. You know, all of these options would be there for them, and
let them openly compete for our children.
right. But you can't have the corporations running the schools, you know, that's what they're gonna say.
Again, we're back to the issue of monopoly.
Yeah, and government is a corporation, and it is a monopolistic.
And that's what
one.
I loved about Harry Browne, when the Libertarian Party had, you know, a future, I believe, was the Harry Browne era. And that's what he called for, was the selling of public schools. But my answer was, well, who's gonna buy the damn thing?
Thank you. Can we talk about the last segment?
Good question.
And welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Bernie Trainer, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. And once again, this is the final segment before the election next week. And the polls are open here in Reno Town Mall, 4001 South Virginia Street, within the shadow of the Atlantis Casino.
That's right.
And you can certainly come down. It's a painless process. I mean, they come up and they do a digital thermometer, takes a second, they go beep, and they find out if you have a fever or
Oh, are
not.
they taking your temperature?
Yeah, they
Oh.
do that, yeah. I mean, if we had socialized medicine, I wonder if we would have those beep.
We'll be strip searched.
Yeah. Or would we still be thinking, sticking thermometers up our, you know what?
What?
I mean, who knows what progress they would, that's the problem with socialism, because
Giving government authority.
yeah, you don't know what progress would not have happened without the innovation
Distorts everything.
that comes with free markets
Mhm.
and competition. You know, I hear a lot of good people that say they don't like competition.
Who are those people?
Well, they're misguided, but they're good people. People on the left that say they don't like competition. But it's not competition in business. It's not like a football game where you're competing to defeat the other person, you know, and there's a winner-take-all situation. In the economy, you're competing to serve the customer. That's who you're competing for.
Right.
You're right, you know, the best way to serve the customer. And if the government is telling you putting in place all these rules that stifle innovation, you're not going to get positive results out of it. You're going to get stagnation.
And we have a whole history of civilization that proves that.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet they don't know this.
No.
It doesn't look good.
No.
You know, it just looks like a new dark age, because we've got to get at the children that are growing up. How do you get to
Right.
them except through their parents, who also suffered through a poor education system prior to their children. So I mean, it's transformationally difficult to accomplish, but that has to be job one.
One child was on a Zoom educational program with Zoom, and he stepped away from the screen,
Yeah.
and they called the police on him.
There were a couple of those, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. Another child had a Nerf gun, one of those soft guns,
Mm-hmm.
and they were going to call Child Protective Services on that incident.
And there were other examples where the parents were allowed to listen to the discourse of the teacher
Right.
in the classroom. Oh man!
That must have shed some blinders off people's eyes.
Can
when
you
they
say
could listen in.
homeschooling?
Yeah. or a push for some kind of school choice, if not homeschooling.
But you see, these teachers went to public schools as well.
Right.
That's the problem. That's the origination. That's the platform, the landscape, where all of this starts. So
They have been trained to look for a simple solution that does not take into an account any trade-offs or anything.
or any sense of history.
Right.
I mean, all you have to do is go back, a couple of hundred years, and we can filter through all of this and figure out why we're in this dire strait that we're experiencing.
Yeah. That's capitalism and the free markets. They bring about incremental change, and nobody announces a government plan or a government program to bring about this change. It happens because consumers want it to happen.
Yeah, right.
And so, entrepreneurs discerning the marketplace put their money where they think consumers are going to utilize their services and their goods. And with central planning, it just doesn't work out that way.
And I think that there's a certain context that we should probably allude to here for the campaign, because I think a lot of people have been watching this landscape now for the last 4 years and are fit to be tied.
Mhm.
They saw the coup d'etat. They know that was a coup d'etat. They saw the Mueller investigation. They saw that was, an investigation in search of a crime, that there was nothing on Trump.
Right.
And they've thrown everything at him and it just bounced off. So they are going to be very agitated when they go to the polls. That's why I don't think this is going to be nearly as close as a lot have said.
Well, I hope so. I hope, because I'm one of those that has not been answering surveys this year, if they are surveys, because I get a lot of junk calls. Everybody wants to sell you insurance and stuff like that, but
Once upon a time, I wanted to say.
But so I haven't been answering the polls. I'm one of those ones
I haven't
that are
either.
uncounted. This not so silent majority, because I put my money into trying to get the word out here on talking truth to power.
I've often answered those calls and was quite happy to answer the questions.
I did in 16.
But not this year. For some
No.
reason. I just didn't.
Right, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a coincidence, but.
Mhm.
Or it's
I think
just
we
that
just had it.
I think we're fed up.
Yeah, we're fed up with them.
Yeah, how can you justify, what they're doing and what the Democrats want to do? And, the burden on the American working family will be greatly increased. Here's the thing, we talked about the unseen. Politicians in the media point to what's seen, and economists like Frederick Bastiat, way back in the 19th century, said, no, don't always look at what's seen, look at what's unseen. There were several studies that came out a couple of years ago.
He was good.
Yes,
Bastiat was
yeah, very good. And there were several studies that came out a couple of years ago that indicated that if we had not had all the regulations that we've had, they used different time frames, but even saying that if we stopped the regulations after FDR and did not go through, we went through the increase of the income tax after 1954, so that it applied to everybody instead of, federal employees, at least supposedly. And then the other regulations that were imposed through all these years, the average salary for Americans is $50K a year now, 50,000. It could be at least twice that, and that's adjusted for inflation. The average American could be earning, pulling in 100K instead of 50K if we didn't have all this government. But I know it's hard to sell that because, again, you can't see it.
That's right.
And the media is not going to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the problem. And that's also true of the income tax. If they were forced to actually write a check every quarter, they'd be a lot more conscious of where that money goes and why it's been taken from them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Well, I go even...
I know there's much more to it than that.
Yeah, I go even further with that, but and you know that you don't know the pernicious effects of government. Like, and you were talking about Harry Browne a minute ago. I love that one saying that he used to say that you know the government first the government breaks your legs. Yeah, then they call a press conference and hand you a pair of crutches and say, see, if it wasn't for the government, he wouldn't be able to walk.
And send you a bill for it. He was great. He was the best candidate, I think, that the party ever had.
The most articulate, I think,
Definitely.
yeah, and then the quickest witted candidate. So
he had my vote both in '96 and 2000, both times.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was Bob Dole. In 96, and then it was George W. Bush in 2000. No, you couldn't possibly, if you wanted out of this mess, you couldn't possibly vote for the status quo.
no,
So that's what the party was for.
just Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
Unfortunately, the American people had an opportunity to get out from under this long before Trump,
Mhm.
but they didn't take advantage of it. They didn't know what the Libertarian Party was.
No,
Their educations were poor.
right,
It's always the same explanation.
right. And you can't really blame people from the minor parties either, because their word doesn't get out. I mean,
Right.
they still don't have at least one debate where
Well,
these
you got
candidates are included.
The
you know.
Presidential Debates Commission, I mean, they've actually worn out their welcome finally, it looks like.
Yes.
That's it for them. You know, retire those people.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but in reality, they're bipartisan.
They raise the levels of legitimacy to obscure and also to preclude some of these options that should be made available to the American people. 15%, I think, what was the 15% of the, what was the requirements that would have allowed the Libertarian and the Green parties to participate in the debate commission? I forget what they are.
Oh, they keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
You know, I think even if it was 5%, then if they reach 5%, like they did or almost did with Gary Johnson, then they say put in another reason why they get excluded.
Yeah,
you know?
they keep moving the goalposts. That's exactly what they've been doing.
So, and I don't know if the debates would change anything, but at least it would give them the opportunity to, cross-examine and
Well, here's how I think it would change.
the status quo.
It would afford the American people an opportunity to hear the subject matter from two different parties in context that they haven't heard previously.
Right.
And some of these subjects would never come up.
Mhm.
Choice in education, selling off public schools, that's what Harry Browne wanted to do.
Right.
I mean, that's not gonna come out, I mean, that hasn't even come out of Trump. He knows better than to suggest that, it'd be suicide for us. But we have to go down that road at some point, or we can't fix the mess
Right.
we've created for ourselves.
Yes, you have to, if people don't have choice, then they're going to keep blindly following the limited, options that the state is going to give them.
Right.
And they won't, well, I can't say that because they will rebel. I mean, people will get what they want or do what they want to do, but
As we enter
it's
the,
much harder and it could be adverse consequences.
as we enter the new dark age.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think from our perspective, we're not the truth of power, ladies and gentlemen. We want you to go out and vote if you know what you're doing.
Right.
Otherwise,
If you don't know what you're doing, stay
just
home.
stay at home.
Yeah.
Turn on an old rerun.
Listen to the phonograph at night.
Trump or treat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.